No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken. And goodness me, what a day we have. Because breaking right now, Reform UK have just overtaken the Labour Party in the polls. And I've got much more on that coming up shortly. But let me just very quickly ask you to please subscribe to our very, very special media venture. We are independent, of course, and www.outspoken.live is where you can do it. Now, also coming up on the show today, Slippery Starmer tried a relaunch, and I watched his disastrous Mission Impossible speech, so you didn't have to.
I don't want to give you the whole story about my parents all over again. But no matter how tough life was growing up, they always believed that if they worked hard, Britain would be better for their children.
Oh, God. More of the same as usual. It was terrible. It didn't get much better than that. My digest on how he failed to make immigration a major priority next. Then, Peter Mcilvenna from the brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast joins me for live analysis. Also coming up on the show today, Maitlis admits she's terrified of Nigel Farage. I'll show you the hilarious response from the fake news agents to the Reform UK Leaders Award win. And it's a very big day in royal news. Lady Colin Campbell is here live with the inside story as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle make separate appearances on either side of the USA, which included gems like this from the numbskull Duke.
Throughout my life, there have been moments when I have read a lot, and there have been moments when I've read nothing. And I highly recommend the latter.
In the uncancelled after show, much more from Lady C. I promise you, you do not want to miss her today. And the uncancelled after show now broadcast exclusively, daily and on demand on my Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. Of course, you can subscribe for free, but if you want to become a paid member and have access to the after show, my exclusive reporting and columns, our live chats on the Substack app, and the chance to join a thriving community, then let me tell you, today is the day to do it, because there's only hours to go in our biggest ever sale. Our Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale gives you 30% off, which means you can get access for just £3 a month, actually, if you sign up annually, plus VAT if you're in the UK. Substack is a safe space, free of censorship. Your support means the world to me. But as I say, please do join me on this mission either way. But now, let's go. Two very significant new pieces of data today which reflect the massive discontent in UK politics. You won't hear the MSM tackle the genuine fears of demographic change in this country, but I will in this independent space. And I understand the growing discontent at news that for the first time ever, Muhaammed is now the most popular name for baby boys in the UK, overtaking Noah. It's no coincidence that intense fears about the changing face of the UK, which has been altered beyond recognition by mass immigration against our express will, is causing a political earthquake. A just released poll confirms a sea change is happening. Look at that, the headline. Reform UK overtaking Labour for the first time. It is also Labour's lowest percentage since October 2019 and their first time in third place since July 2019. Reform UK Chairman Zia Youssef posted on X, Reform now polling ahead of Labour. Reform has all the momentum in British politics. But it's no wonder, given this is how the public feels about how Starmer is treating our border. Truth in that, right? So what's a failing Prime Minister to do? A dodgy reset of course.
After all, in the last 14 years, they tightened their belts when they were told, we're all in it together. They closed ranks to the deadly virus, and they never once wavered in their commitment to stand with Ukraine.
From what I'm aware, we never consented to the complete smashing of our economy for totally unnecessary COVID lockdowns and a totally unnecessary war in Ukraine. Zip it on that front. But today, Starmer kept talking about his missions. But as far as I'm concerned, this is mission impossible because he didn't even bother to include stopping the boats or reducing immigration.
People. Not changing the conversation, not walking away or talking down to them. And that's not just about immigration. But as ever, that shows the argument. Take these statistics that were published last week, which revealed with total clarity how the Tories lost control of immigration, opened the borders deliberately to cover up the extent of their economic stagnation. Zero regard for the damage to trust in politics. Absolutely unforgivable.
Well, it's all well and good slamming the Tories for this mess. But what are you going to do about it, mate? Even the mainstream media has had enough of his diversionary tactics.
I don't want to give you the whole story about my parents all over again. But no matter how tough life was growing up, they always believed that if they worked hard, Britain would be better for their children.
Over to you, Beth.
Beth, please.
Thank you.
Beth Rigby.
Sorry. Yeah, I've got stuck. I got stuck, I'm up. Prime Minister Beth Rigby, Sky News. I want to follow up on Chris's question because I'm a bit confused. You say migration in this country under the Tories is unforgivable. You said borders are one of your top two priorities. You put in small boats into your mission promises before the election, adding it to your 5 missions, and yet on the banners behind you, there's nothing there. In the 6 milestones of measurement, there's nothing there. So you have not given the public one metric on which to measure you when it comes to migration. Is that because you fear failure, or is it because you said it was a priority to win, but actually it's not even in your top 6? Thank you.
No, Beth, the way we've constructed it is that there are foundational things that a government must do. And they...
GB News got short shrift too.
Your plan is to reduce net migration and reduce overall small boat crossings. GB News viewers will be saying simply, is that it, Prime Minister? Why can't you stop the boats and cut net migration to under 100,000? Is it because you can't or you don't want to? And just very quickly, can you afford all this with no more big tax rises?
Look, Chris, we are going to drive down migration, both legal and illegal. That will only be done with a serious plan.
It's pathetic. There is no serious plan. No plan. Just more open borders. As the surging Reform UK leader Nigel Farage put it, Keir Starmer's milestones for government don't include immigration or the exploding population. This reset offers no change and guarantees economic failure. Indeed, the promise to decarbonise our electricity grid by 2030 will do just that. So Starmer is doomed. But so is Britain if we continue on this path. Now, the uncancelled interview. Delighted to welcome to Outspoken for the first time today, Peter Mcilvenna, host of the brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast, which I was delighted to appear on. I think it was last week, wasn't it, Peter? But goodness me, so much has happened since then. So brilliant to have you on the show. What do you make of this seemingly a bombshell poll showing Reform UK leading the governing Labour Party.
Well, Dan, it was great to have you last week, and I think we put out the interview on Monday, and it was great to delve into your background and your understanding assessment of what is happening. Of course, people get that Monday to Friday with you directly on your channel, and it's exciting. I mean, Nigel has done a phenomenal effort, and he's not perfect, and Reform UK are not perfect, but they have upended UK politics like probably few others, and we have an electoral system that doesn't allow such upstarts to come and actually change the system, to change the conversation, to upend the electoral system. And Nigel has done that on a first past the post system. So huge credit to him. And of course, we saw in the election just months ago that although they got, what was it, 15%, 15%, that they got 5 MPs, a horrendous return for that popular vote. And yet Nigel has brushed past that, and he has surged in popularity. The party has surged in popularity. And part of that is because of Nigel's charisma. And part of it is because no one seems to have an answer to the issue of immigration. And it is immigration and the economy. That's what affects across Europe. That's what got President Trump back into the White House. Those are the issues that affect people. The economy is what affects people's pockets day to day, whether they can make ends meet at the end of the month. And it is mass immigration and changes of their society, changes of their culture, changes of their community, and whether they can get their kids into school, whether they can get into the GP surgery, whether that is what it means, mass immigration. And Labour tell us they're going to change it. And I also watched Keir Starmer'S presentation. I didn't hear anything from it. And the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, she may be wonderful, and I've always liked her in the past. I've respected her. I've loved her engagement on the cultural issues, especially on the gender debate. And she is strong, she is passionate, she has convictions, and she comes from a Christian background, and I love that. And yet we have to see whether she is able to take the Conservative Party that had been kicked in the teeth, and rightly so, at the last general election for utterly failing the British population on every single issue in the last 14 years, whether she can take that and whether she can make the Conservative Party conservative again. At the moment, it's Nigel Farage that are making a Conservative Party conservative, and that is Reform UK.
Indeed. And look, I'm sorry, I was prepared to give Kemi Badenoch a chance. I don't think she was the right choice for the Conservative Party. I made it quite clear that I thought Robert Jenrick was the person who had the hope of turning it around. But she has been appalling since getting the job. And she's surrounding herself by the same establishment Westminster figures. It's not going to work. Just want to show you this post that's just gone up now from Isabel Oakeshott, who writes, for years, Nigel Farage and Richard Tice were mocked and dismissed by the entire establishment. Reform UK had no money and barely any paid staff. A handful of true believers kept going. Now look. And she's right, isn't she, to point that out?
She is, and I'm not a massive Isabel Oakeshott fan. And I'm not a massive... I don't, what she's put out, I think it's having 2 feet in the mainstream and balancing that up and juggling that up.
Because of course, for people who don't know, she is, as well as being a very successful journalist and stuff, she is the partner of Richard Tice, the deputy leader.
She is, and I think Richard Tice, and I've never met Richard Tice at all, and he may be principled, but he is not a leader, and that's the reason, obviously, why Nigel stepped back in again to take the party, because Nigel is this charismatic leader that is known not only in the UK, but worldwide, and of course, his connections with President Trump. So Nigel is the perfect person to lead us, and I don't know what... Richard Tice brings, and I don't know him, so I can say that with no criticism of him personally at all. But I don't see him looking at the political parties, looking at those leadership candidates, looking at our political system, and to me, being homeless after UKIP got Brexit and wondered where do we go to from here, and looking at Richard Tyson, he has never inspired me with confidence and enthusiasm. Nigel, of course, has stepped back into the mix, and although I may have question marks on some things that Nigel does, I do think he understands the immigration issue more than anyone else, and that is the key. It was one of the key issues in the Brexit debate, and it is one of the key issues today. And no one seems to care. Not the Tories, not the Conservatives, and whether Kemi Badenoch was part of that or not, I don't know. But no one in the last 14 years has got it in the Conservative Party, and that's why when I see Kemi or other Conservative across the dispatch box telling us actually how immigration will be fixed. Seriously, you don't get it. You've destroyed this country on mass immigration, and you now say in opposition, you're going to fix it, you're going to make it better. And that's why you look at Keir Starmer getting in, not because of Labour's popularity or not because of Labour's ability to put forward an agenda for the country, but because the Conservatives failing. That's why they got in, because the Conservatives have failed. Therefore, people think I need to vote for someone else. And Reform wasn't the position for people to take votes. Therefore, people said, well, I'll go back to Red. I mean, that red wall that was broken, I'll go back to Labour. That's how my family voted. What can be worse than the Conservatives under 14 years? And that is a difficult question to push back. I wish I had an answer to that, but I don't know if there is an answer to that, because I don't know how worse Labour can be in terms of mass immigration to the Conservative Party.
And look, no solution is going to be perfect here. And I always say, I'm a critical friend to Reform UK. We'll get into this a bit more shortly. But of course, there are certain things that Richard Tyson said. For example, I disagree with describing Tommy Robinson supporters as that lot. But I do think it's important that there is some unity on the right, because otherwise this, S-word show is going to continue. I try and be as polite as possible, Peter, but you know what I'm saying. I want to talk about this shocking chart, though. And I think it is shocking. And no one in the mainstream media will say this is shocking. You're not allowed to. But let's just look at it. Top 10 boys' names in England and Wales last year. These are official stats, Peter. It's from ONS. Number 10, Henry. 9, Oscar. 8, Theodore. 7, Lucas. 6, Arthur. 5, Leo. 4, George. 3, Oliver. 2, Noah. But number 1 for the first time, even though it has been in the top 10 since 2016, Muhaammed. Your reaction?
Well, this is one of the concerns I have on Reform, that they're not willing to engage on this culture clash that we face. And immigration, if it's coming from a nation, which we have seen across the decades, we have seen immigrants coming over and integrating in society, and that's what you want. You want people who will become British, who will become part of society, and who will have all the values that we have as British citizens. And we've had that up to now. And it was Trevor Phillips, I think, who brought this up in stark contrast. I think it was maybe 15, 14 years, a Channel 4 interview talking about Muslims being British. And he said there's something different about Islam, that there is an integration issue that Islam have in the West. And he said this was something that he had not seen before in the Windrush generation, in those coming from the sub-Asian continent across from India. We have seen integration by and large, and yet it is not coming from the Islamic world. And I think that is a fair conversation. It is a fair criticism, and it's a fair conversation point. And I don't think we have had that in our society. And I think if Muhammad had been the number one name, and previous years, it has been the number one name whenever the 14 spellings of Muhammad are put together, but it's the one spelling that's number one. And I think we have a right to ask, Dan, you have a right to ask on your media profile whether this is positive or negative. And you cannot be criticized for asking that question. Let's put it on the table. Let's say whether Islam having a greater prominence in the West, is that good or bad? And if all the things that Islam brings in terms of culture, in terms not only of religion, but in terms of food, halal, in terms of finance, Sharia finance, in terms of how women are treated, in terms of how non-Muslims are treated, let's have a conversation about this. And that is not wrong to debate whether a change in society is good or bad. It's a normal part of society, of culture. And I think for the last 14 years, we have not been able to have this conversation. And of course, the term Islamophobia has shut down this debate. And it's not an angry debate. It's simply, what does it mean to be British? What does it mean to have the values in our nation? What are the values that we have? When our politicians talk about British values, what are those values? And cultures, societies, religious groups that have come in from all over the world have generally picked up those values that we have in Britain and have honoured those, and they have become their values. With Islam, I think we are seeing something different, and I would just love to have a conversation about that, whether that's positive or negative for the UK.
Yeah, the thing is that if you even raise the issue of Islam in any way, you're immediately described as a bigot. I mean, when I posted on X the fact that I was going to be talking about Muhammad overtaking Noah, immediately someone came through and described me as a bigot. And it's very interesting. I mean, look at the BBC and how they decided to illustrate the picture. And I think even those decisions are very, very interesting, aren't they? But I will talk about this issue. And I will talk about it because I know what is going on. So I had Suhail Ahmed on the show recently. Now, this is a young man who was British born. He happens to be gay, which is one of the reasons that he broke free of extreme Islam. But he was planning a lone wolf terror attack on Canary Wharf for a long time. And he's very clear about the fact that what is going on in the mosques in East London is radicalization, is talk that gay men should be thrown off the top of buildings in the UK. That's before you get to the issue of women's rights. So I think we do have a right to talk about it, and there has to be a way where the discussion can be had without immediately being described as Islamophobic.
I agree, and I would love to have Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, actually leading a Pride Festival in Gaza. I would love for that to be the case and see what happens. And let's have a grown-up conversation about how human beings are treated that have a different view from the particular culture, and whether they are treated with fairness and where they're treated rightly. And Dan, I've always appreciated how you engage on these issues, I think in a similar way to Calvin, in a very gentle way, in a very non-confrontational way, in a way that let's just have a grown-up conversation about these. And you mentioned Tommy Robinson, and Tommy certainly has passion, and that passion can maybe sometimes be seen as aggression, and I don't think that is necessarily the case. But you and Calvin have got a very different approach, and I think I like that approach, and I think your approach is a way to have this conversation, not with anger or aggression or forcefulness, but simply looking at the facts and having a rational conversation about whether this is good or not. Because I know from the Conservative government, and I know from this Labour government, we haven't seen any conversation about how women are treated in Islam. Yeah. Zero conversation about that. And when you see women covered head to foot, is that a choice? Actually, no, it's not a choice. They come from a patriarchal society where they have very little say. Whenever Muslim men can marry 4 wives, whenever in many Islamic countries, there's no age restriction for how young the bride can be. This is not right. We do not accept that treatment of children or women in the West. And let's have a conversation about it. I mean, in my local train station, there was a big sign to say, looking at a woman sexually is not right. And there was another sign about touching a woman sexually is not right. If you see this happen, please phone this number. How have we come to the point where you need to put a sign up to say, if you sexually assault a woman, that is wrong? I learned that from growing up. Dana, you learned that from growing up. There is a culture issue of people who grew up in certain cultures treat women in a different way. And we need to reset how we see women's place in society. And we need to understand how we bring in education to treat people, because if we have people growing up who are no longer learning that in the home, then they need to learn it some way, or else we're going to be in serious trouble in terms of women and their rights in this country.
And of course, the complete irony is that it's the hard left and the woke-topians who are meant to care most about women's rights and the LGBT community, as they call it, though I hate calling it that, but then will not stand up against extreme Islam, which literally treat those two groups of people with complete disdain. Breaking right now, the Reform UK poll surge is causing panic among the elite class, terrified of the prospect of a Prime Minister Farage. And it's Nigel's young teams and their clever use of social media that is helping to build the momentum. So I don't know if you have Spotify. I do. I absolutely love it. So they released their big Spotify Wrapped countdown yesterday, where you see your most listened to tunes of the year. And within hours, Reform had put up their own version of Wrapped, saying you've changed this year, and so has the way you vote. Hashtag Reform Wrapped. But what's brilliant is they do it with comedy as well. So look at some of the songs that they have put on their list. Get Out of Here, the D-Day version by Thin Lizzy, bit of a dig at Fishy Rishi Sunak there. Absolutely Everybody, the mass immigration version by Vanessa Amorosi, and Chagos Surrender by Elvis Presley. They also trumpet Nigel Farage's massive personal vote, I guess you could say, at the most recent election. And of course, all of this is clearly very deeply unsettling for the likes of Emily Maitlis and the fake news agents. And a bit like with MSNBC in the US, we are watching a breakdown happen in real time. Over to Emily.
We were at the Spectator Parliamentary Awards last night, and they have a sort of list of slightly tongue-in-cheek awards, and one of them was for Newcomer of the Year, Parliamentary Newcomer of the Year. And I turned to the person next to me and I said, that's going to go to Nigel Farage.
I said the same.
And they said, no, he's not a newcomer, And I said, yeah, that's the gag. He lost 7 times, now he's won, he's the newcomer in Parliament. And sure enough, Nigel Farage gets up to accept the Newcomer of the Year award. And it was quite interesting. There's a smattering of applause. And I thought that it's always a moment where you're trying to work out if the room is ecumenical. Has everyone met, irrespective of their party and their policies and their differences, to say, let's celebrate sort of politics or parliament or government or, journalism, whatever. It's a sort of meeting of lots of, the good and the great from all sorts of different arenas, I suppose.
It's also filled with self-deprecating humour about yourself, your own party.
Generally, it is.
It's kind of, there's a lightness of tone.
They played the Trump music, proud to be an American. And up he walks on the stage and he said, well, thank you, it's lovely to be the newcomer. I'm just telling you that at the next election, there will be hundreds of newcomers, and there will be Reform newcomers, and we will be forming the next government. And he sat down and the room went utterly silent. And it was a sort of dual moment, I think, where people heard what he said and believed what he said, but no one was clapping. And that was the moment when I suddenly realised, as we talked about a little bit on the show yesterday, that Labour and the Conservatives have sort of come together.
And no one was laughing. Which they would have done.
Nobody
probably
rejected it,
12,
exactly.
24 months
So
ago.
exactly that. That was what was so interesting about it, was that you just it was like we'd been in this jokey, fun party, and then someone has just stood up and said something terrible has just happened, and the mood changes like that on a sixpence.
The balloon's burst.
Yeah, the balloon has burst.
But we were left thinking about it. I think everyone, you caught people's eye around the room, and everyone went, "That's entirely possible."
Peter Mcilvenna of the Hearts of Oak podcast. I mean, this is actual meltdown stuff. Total panic. And there's so much to pick up from those couple of minutes from the fake news agents. Number one, they all socialise together. They are part of the uni party, the mainstream media. I mean, they believe that they're in this together and they're not there for the people.
Oh, completely. And they don't get it. They don't realise how out of touch they are with the people. They don't realise, I mean, if you, and I don't know Nigel really well, but I've been with him at different events or in places, and he is mobbed because there is a huge excitement at Nigel Farage. He is a hero of the people. And I think our politicians are desperate for that adoration and appreciation. Emily Maitlis is probably desperate for that as well. Maybe Nigel could give her some tips on how to actually get the public to like her, but they don't get it. They're completely out of touch, and they see Nigel's rise in popularity, and it was there for the Brexit vote. Without Nigel, we wouldn't have Brexit, wouldn't have us getting out of the European Union. And now with the Reform Party, and they mock it, they ridicule it, and they don't get it. And do you notice that Emily said, they played the Trump music, proud to be an American? And I've had the privilege of being it. I'd love to go with you, actually, Dan, to a Trump rally. I went to 3 different Trump rallies over the year. And it's energy, it's excitement, it's passion, you get to meet people. It's such an awesome atmosphere. Very different from the UKIP events that I used to go to, which were great, but they didn't have that same passion and energy. And she mocks that, proud to be an American. Why shouldn't an American be proud to be an American? A Brit should be proud to be a Brit. A French should be proud to be French. A German, that should be part of our inner being, part of a culture, part of a country, that we have pride in that nation. And the BBC mock that they belittle that pride in the nation state. And you realise that you're right, it is the uni party, and the BBC, along with the mainstream media, do not understand that passion that people have for their culture and society.
No, it's a club. It's a total club. And actually, they make me sick, because these are the same people who spent so much time trying to subvert democracy when it came to the Brexit referendum. And we now have Michael Gove in charge of The Spectator. He, of course, was advocating for Kamala Harris to win. But look at one of these pictures from this night at the Spectator Parliamentarian Awards. Look at that. Beth Rigby, Sly News political editor, hanging out, having a laugh, getting drunk probably on free champagne with Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. They are all in this together. So if Nigel Farage is going to come in and make all of these people unhappy, then I am here for it. I am completely here for it. I understand, Peter, of course there are people who at the moment aren't happy with Nigel for one reason or another, and there are genuine reasons to have the discussions, like you pointed out, about demographic change, about the fact that he doesn't necessarily believe the mass deportation of illegals is practical when Donald Trump does. And we will have those discussions. However, this Westminster insider system, which is damning our country, really does need to be swept away. And Nigel seems like the only hope of doing that.
No, I agree. And we would be in a much better situation if we have Nigel Farage in number 10 than Keir Starmer. I think your viewers would agree 100% on that. whatever hang-ups we may have, you never get the perfect person. You never get the perfect leader. Trump is not a perfect person. And yet what he brings is that energy. And Nigel brings a large part of that. And you pointed out Beth Rigby sitting with Angela Rayner. I mean, Angela Rayner must be the last person you'd want to go and have a drink with. I would choose Nigel Farage any day over Angela Rayner, because Nigel brings something. He brings a personality. He brings conviction. He brings enthusiasm. He wants to do something. Where I look at Angela Rayner, anyone in the Labour Party, all they want to do is be in power. And that's what we had for the last 14 years, conserve that entitlement mentality. And Nigel brings something different. It's not entitlement, but it's actually wanting to do something. And he may get the spotlight, and rightly so. And a byproduct of that is that actually good can be done. And that's why I think we would all want Nigel to be in number 10 much more than we would want Keir Starmer or David Lammy or Angela Rayner or any other of the pygmies that Labour have in power.
Exactly. And this is why it is our responsibility in the independent media to call out how the system works, because it isn't working and it hasn't worked for a long time. And sure, Nigel might believe at the moment that he has to move to a degree into the mainstream in order for him to have success. That's where I disagree a little bit with his strategy, Peter. And obviously, Hearts of Oak is part of Steve Bannon's network. And I sometimes wish Farage would listen a bit more to the Bannon approach at life, which is, you're never going to win the mainstream media over. They're never going to be on your side. They are there to destroy you. So don't play by their rules. And that means, for example, when it comes to Tommy Robinson and Tommy Robinson supporters, you don't need to deride them. And also when it comes to some of your candidates who may have, for example, posted on X, and we saw this, something about Tommy Robinson being a patriot, you don't need to expunge them from your party and dump them. But I'm not going to go to the place, though, where I say, oh, but this means Reform UK and Nigel Farage are over for me, because he has a strategy, and part of that strategy does involve having to appeal to a wider Conservative Party base and also the Labour Red Wall.
I agree with you, but I probably would not be able to be a member of Reform or be a candidate for Reform, because I've known Tommy for 16 years. He's become a good friend, and through thick and thin, rightly or wrongly, that I will back him to the hilt. And he is one of the bravest people.
I wouldn't be able to either, Peter. And I find that really concerning, that there's a lot of guests who I have on the show, great people who, based on Reform UK's current rules, would not be able to stand for the party. And these are people who I consider to be an asset to any political movement and an asset to the country. I mean, you mentioned Father Calvin Robinson earlier. He's one that would not be able to stand for Reform UK as well under their current rules. But maybe there'll be a shifting of the Overton window. But as I say, that's why I take the approach of critical friend here, and let's push reform in the right direction. But to believe at this point that there is going to be another political movement that has the chance of saving this country, I think it's unlikely. That's the problem. So we have to work with the best of what we've got. And Nigel has a lot going for him. And also there's a lot of good people who have a lot going for them within Reform UK. Look at the impact that Rupert Lowe has made as an MP in just a few short weeks.
I agree. Rupert Lowe, a fantastic standout performer in Reform, and great individual. I just think Reform are great, absolutely, but they could be so much better. And I think they could be even better if they would not look down on those who are regarded as working class, all the Tommy supporters. And I think there's a way of embracing that without necessarily agreeing with everything that Tommy may say or do, because we can be friends, we can connect with people, we can have networks without agreeing on everything that someone else says or does, but we can still be shoulder to shoulder with them. And I think that is definitely possible. And I think that will make reform an even bigger threat to the Uni Party than they currently are. So my line, and probably yours as well, Dan, is they're excellent and they're so much better than what we have. But I think they could be so much better if they don't attack friendly fire, if they stop the friendly fire and they embrace on their side and get back to focusing on, which they are doing very well, but they could focus even more if they focused all that fire on Labour and the Conservative Party.
Big time. But things are going to change a lot, Peter, over the next couple of months, aren't they? Because already, how hilarious that all of these politicians who said, oh, no, there's no deal to be done in Ukraine ever. We fight to the death. All of a sudden talking about negotiations, something that I was saying, God, probably 2.5 years ago. And they're pretending as if we haven't noticed that they've done a complete 180. And we know why, because Trump is coming to the White House. So the entire political landscape is going to change. And I would say Nigel's approach at the moment is softly. And look, I've got Paul Thorpe on the show tomorrow. I know he will take a very different position on this, and that's fine. We can have those discussions, but we have to keep thinking about what is the best way to save this country. How do we do that? We need a political movement. We need a moral movement that will be led by people like Tommy Robinson outside of the system. And we need a media movement, which will be led by people like us, hopefully. So Peter Mcilvenna, so great to have you on the show today. I absolutely love Hearts of Oak. Really recommend people subscribe and follow on YouTube, and especially for my interview last week, of course. Thank you so much, Peter. Oh, sorry for cutting you off there. Now, stand by. Lady Colin Campbell is up in just 1 minute, and there has been major royal news overnight, so you do not want to miss her take. But first, you know how I often talk about the need for free speech to be protected. But I've been increasingly thinking of the need for personal protection online from snoopers, bad actors, and hackers. I'm delighted to tell you I've now found the fail-safe solution. But what's more, this VPN, or virtual private network to use the full term, is also a life changer when it comes to providing you entertainment and information from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. Let me introduce you to Surfshark, an incredible and easy-to-use service that encrypts all your internet traffic, meaning your online activities stays safe so you can shop, stream, browse, and conduct your banking online in complete privacy. But the benefits of Surfshark go way beyond keeping you safe online. So this is what's amazing about a VPN. It allows you access to your favorite entertainment and news shows and channels from anywhere in the world, wherever you are, including, by the way, to all the big streaming services like Hulu and iPlayer and HBO Max and Peacock and Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, which may not be available in your particular area. But within seconds, you can be watching as if you're in another country. It's truly amazing. For sport as well, because if you're traveling for work or on holiday, you can watch all of your favorite content from home without worrying about the geo-blocks. This is also an insurance policy against creeping censorship in many countries like France, where Rumble has been banned for many months now. So this is all about watching anything, anytime, anywhere. It is true freedom. A VPN can save money too, because think, when you are shopping online, you can get the best deals from anywhere in the world, because some websites change their prices depending on where you are surfing from. There are other benefits of Surfshark too. It works for your whole family because you can have unlimited devices. So an entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. And there are over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, meaning there's a world of choice at your fingertips. The other great thing, and I know many of you, this is the first time that you may have thought about using a VPN, and you really must get one, but it has 24/7 customer service. So you can go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. What's more, Surfshark are so confident they're the best VPN in the world that you can give it a try for a full 30 days. And if you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price, or you can just click in the link in the description box below. But now, back to the show. And breaking right now, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have continued their separate lives, their professional separation on two sides of America. And Harry has refused to publicly deny troubles in the marriage. It's absolutely fascinating what has gone on. Let's take a look first at Meghan Markle arriving at this Tyler Perry event in Los Angeles, where she did not want to get off that red carpet. She was not moving, even when the PRs tried to drag her away. Well, for analysis on this now, let me bring in the great Lady Colin Campbell. Lady C, I want to come to Prince Harry in just a moment because there's so much to go into in terms of his very bizarre, very testy, very defensive performance on stage in New York. But first, can we talk about Meghan? Because yet again, she just didn't get this appearance right, did she?
Oh, Dan, you know, we really should start to save Meghan from her self-society.
Yeah.
Aside from anything else. I mean, she's just like glue on a red carpet. She absolutely refuses to budge. But I thought she looked so dreadful, you know, she looked so unglamorous. And I mean, no lady wears a tennis bracelet with an evening gown. I mean, she always manages to get it wrong. You just sort of, you despair for her. I mean, she's now been royal for 6 years and she can't get the basics right. And I thought she looked awful. You know, I mean, I'd like her to look good, but she looked awful.
But Lady C, you actually see there, right? This hapless PR woman is trying to drag her off. And this is something that happens all the time. She was trying to steal the limelight from Tyler Perry, and it was just incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, that's why I said, Dan, that she's like glue on a red carpet.
Yeah.
You know, she just absolutely refuses to budge. It's embarrassing.
I mean, look at that shot. Look at that shot. I mean, that's tacky.
The whole thing is tacky. Her attire is totally unsuitable. You know, she needs to make up her mind. Is she an actress? Is she a hustler? Is she totty? Or is she going to be royal? And she's clearly decided that she can't cut the mustard with royal. And so she's going to cut the mustard with being, well, she wants to look like hot totty, but she actually ends up being like cool tatty. Sorry.
Did we hear anything about how she went down inside this event? Because it was quite embarrassing for her that on the invitation that was put out, her name was actually last on the list, which again is very embarrassing for a member of the royal family, given that they used her official titles.
Well, it also shows to what extent even Tyler Perry, for notwithstanding the fact that he's using her, which of course he always intended to. I mean, when he offered a total stranger to be of service to her any way that she wanted before the wedding. And of course, he obviously expected to be asked to the wedding, and he wasn't asked to the wedding. And I would imagine that the mere fact that she comes last, maybe they're trying to justify it in terms of, in Hollywood, sometimes if you come last, it's almost as good as coming first. But I suspect underneath it all, everybody knows that they are finished. They are finished as a prestigious couple, as a prestigious act. They are finito, and there's no two ways about it. They have lost all their desirability and their prestige.
And Lady C, just look at this list, because I think it is worth talking about just how much their stock has fallen. Because considered Hollywood royalty there, top of the list, Ari Emanuel, Whoopi Goldberg. Then you've got some quite big names like Gayle King and Kerry Washington. But even Scott Mills, the British DJ, is above them on the list. And then at the very bottom, Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I mean, it is a mortifying fall from grace.
Oh, without a doubt, Dan. If ever there was any doubt, that's it. And when you stop to think, this follows in the last few weeks a series of blows where even the People magazine thing that, Meghan leaked it so that everybody would think that she's going to have a fabulous 2025, which was going to counterbalance all the negative stuff here, the Tom Sykes article, the German documentary. And if you actually examine closely what People magazine said, they basically repeat what Tom was saying in the Sunday Times, that Meghan and Harry are, as a brand, in deep trouble. They no longer have the prestige that they once had. And in fact, they are busted flushes. So even People, which was supposed to be promoting her and being an antidote to Tom's condemnation of her, has turned out to actually condemn her as well. I mean, and she hasn't yet learned that the way to actually be prestigious is to behave as if you are royal. She has come into the royal family. She has brought her cheap and vulgar hustle with her. She has worked them from being one of the most prestigious and popular couples on earth to the most mocked couple on earth at the moment. And even people like Tyler Perry, who are supposed to be promoting her, or People magazine, on the one hand, they appear to be doing something positive, while on the other hand, they lay down banana skins that send their reputation flying. I mean, don't you see that even Tyler Perry's thing and the People magazine article actually are not real positives? I mean, you're a very experienced writer and journalist. And if you wanted to big up someone, would you big them up like that? Of course you wouldn't.
No, she's losing publications by the day. And as you say, even her allies are now struggling to defend her conduct. And of course, I believe much of the change in tone came from the Hollywood Reporter, because when the Hollywood Reporter turns on you, you lose Hollywood. Now, I want to talk about the other side of America, though, because we had a completely bizarre interview going on with Prince Harry on stage. I believe, Lady C, and I think it's best we set this up actually and contextualize it first. I believe he only agreed to go to this conference in New York, because officially it's to promote Spare, but actually he hasn't agreed to do any other promotion for Spare at all on this particular tour. So I think it was very convenient for him to go to New York today, yesterday, because it meant he avoided having to be on the red carpet with his own wife at the Tyler Perry event. Remember, he's on the board for the Tyler Perry event, and also the briefing that his own team had given to People magazine said that the reason Harry and Meghan attend events separately is so that the children are not left alone in Montecito, which would have meant he should have stayed in California. So that's the first thing I would say. I don't know if you agree with that.
I do, but go on. I do agree, but go on, Dan.
Well, then I was going to say, he gets up on stage, and it is a very, very odd interview with Andrew Sorkin, who is from the New York Times, very much politically aligned with Harry, certainly not trying to trip him up in any way, but Harry is defensive, trying to use his humor, which I don't find very funny anymore, to be completely honest, as some sort of way to humiliate the interviewer. But most significantly, he refuses to deny that there are troubles in his marriage when he is given the opportunity to do so on an international stage. So let's watch this, Lady C, and then I'll get you to react off the bat.
And I was looking even as we were in the race coming up to this day. I Googled News You, and there were people who are fascinated by everything you're doing all the time. They're fascinated by Meghan is in California right now, and you're here. And there's articles left and right about, why are you doing independent events? Why aren't you doing them together?
Because you invited me, you should have known.
This is true.
You should have known that was going to happen.
But do you know, is that normal for you? That the second there's an article that says she's in California, you're in New York, they say, well, what is happening with these two, right? So is that a good thing for you in a way that there's so much interest in you?
No, there's definitely not a good thing. Because apparently we've bought or moved house maybe 10, 12 times. We've apparently divorced maybe 10, 12 times as well. So everyone's just like, what? So yeah, it's hard to keep up with, but that's why you just sort of ignore it. The people I feel most sorry about are the trolls who their hopes are just built and built and built, and it's like yes, and then it doesn't happen. Right. So I feel sorry for them. Genuinely, I do. I mean that. But yes, I have no doubt that everything that we've spoken about today, in the last, the clock's on zero, 25 minutes. Will be spun or twisted somehow against me, and maybe you yourself,
it's possible,
will be trolled relentlessly, and for that I can only apologise. But you did invite me, so it's not.
Well, I know we're almost out of time, but
no one's trolling you, Harry. I played your full answer, no editing whatsoever. Did you notice, Lady C, not one comment about it's complete rubbish? Things are really strong, we're really happy.
Well, he is a past master of deflection. He's also so condescending and really always very rude to the interviewer. And maybe the public doesn't pick it up, but you pick it up and I pick it up. And let's remember that Harry is basically saying that today the trolls say one thing, tomorrow another, and there are many different stories. Most of those stories emanate from Harry and Meghan's quarter. They're the ones who one day are saying X and the other day they're saying Y. They are the ones who are keeping themselves in the news, effectively trolling themselves by telling lie after lie after lie about their activities, or their intentions, or the reactions to them. And it's really interesting how both Harry and Meghan play persecutor as victim. And they turn things around in the most straightforward way, where they plant stories that contradict each other on a daily basis. And then the fact that those stories have been printed usually by tame publications who are in their pocket, whether it be People or Page Six or Vanity Fair, it's Marie Claire, etc., etc. And then they spin around and say, oh, we're being victimized. But they're the ones and their PR who are actually planting these stories.
Indeed.
So,
I mean, Harry even admitted the other day, People magazine even admitted the other day that they had received an email directly from Prince Harry. So this idea that he's not involved in playing the media game is lunacy. As you point out, Lady C, it's also his own team who have put forth this ridiculous line about a professional separation, a twin-track approach.
yes. And also, his people have put out that they are possibly getting separated and possibly not. Remember, many of these things, you will know, Dan, come from one branch of the Harry and Meghan camp or the other. That's why I always say I don't believe a thing that I am told about them except from certain people. And also, I know as a fact that Harry has not Meghan, Harry has lied to 2 duchesses that I know, providing false information. So Harry himself got one of his greatest friends to get in touch with me when I was writing the original version of Meghan and Harry, the real story, to traduce his father-in-law and explain why poor Thomas Markle had to be excluded and Meghan could never get back in touch with her father. And I knew it was a lie. I printed that I didn't believe it. And sure enough, it's turned out the whole thing was a lie. So you have Harry and Meghan, on the one hand, creating the narrative that conflicts with a previous narrative, then complaining about the fact that the narrative doesn't accord with any consistency and that they are being victimized. It's actually, the game is so sick that if they're not drug-addled, they better go and become drug-addled, because the whole thing is insensible, save for the fact that it confuses the public. And Harry, remember, is Diana's son, and Diana used to always say, confuse the enemy. That was her tactic and her technique. And Harry is doing it. He is briefing from his mother's playbook, and Meghan also does it. Now, Meghan didn't learn that on her own. She learned that from Harry. So let's give credit where it's due. And Harry condescendingly acts as if they are being victimized. They need to be in the news on a daily basis, they think. Because if they're not in the news on a daily basis, they have no pulling power, because you will know, Dan, better than most, that they are already pretty much poison, box office poison in Hollywood. And nobody in Hollywood wants to touch them. I mean, one of the really important things that emerged from Tom Sykes's article in the Sunday Times was the confirmation that leading figures in Hollywood refused to take Meghan's calls. Now, I've been saying this for some time, and I'm sure you have as well. But when Tom Sykes says it in the Sunday Times, you know that it's developed a level of noise that is deafening. And so Harry and Meghan have to play the victim, because that's all they have to offer. They don't have talent to offer. They don't have anything of interest to offer. That's my take on it.
No, I think you're completely right. Lady C, I want to show you another astonishing moment with Prince Harry on stage, where again, he thinks for some reason he's being targeted and gives a very confusing answer when he's asked about his security situation, where he actually even invokes, I think quite disgustingly, Princess Diana. And it's incredibly, incredibly odd. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at this. Your mind will be blown.
You've talked a lot about going to therapy. You have a case in the UK so that you can go back there and hopefully have better security when you're there. And wanted to understand sort of where that whole thing stands, and also just whether you plan to remain here with us in the US.
I do. I very much enjoy living here and bringing my kids up here. It's a part of my life that I never thought I was going to live, and I feel as though it's the life that my mum wanted for me, and to be able to do the things that I am able to do with my kids that I undoubtedly wouldn't be able to do in the UK is huge, and that's a fantastic opportunity. I'm hugely grateful for that. You bring up another case, one that I can't talk about, and you should know that. But what I would say in that is, she's talking about security. I never should have had security removed in the first place. It's amazing when you go through this litigation, of which I have become a professional at, of which I aim to retire fairly soon. In that regard, I certainly don't want to be starting. I'm not starting them, right? I'm just trying to, again, find truth and accountability and ultimately reconciliation. But I never should have had it removed. But the disclosure, I think you guys call it discovery process, has been troubling and enlightening. And I just have to now sit and wait until April.
I mean, Lady C, so many contradictions there. What do you make of it?
Well, I don't know who Harry thinks he's fooling. Maybe he thinks he's fooling the public. But my experience of Joe and Jane public is that they're a lot more intelligent than they're given credit for being by the cognoscenti and the woke brigade and all of those supposedly enlightened people who are anything but. Because any fool knows that any royal in a royal scenario is ring-fenced by royal security. So if Harry and Meghan are here and they are within the royal environment, which he is allowed to give 28 days notice and on a case-by-case basis. And if he stays at Buckingham Palace, or if he stays within a royal environment, they are all automatically protected by the royal system. So for Harry to expect the average person, Mr. and Mrs. Public, to swallow the lie that they are more endangered here as royals in the royal environment than they would be in Texas, Jamaica, Colombia, Montecito, it's all absolute stupidity. It makes no sense. But of course, Harry is trying in every way possible to get back his IPP status because then at the moment, he has to pay for his security out of his own pocket. Once, if that's restored, the American government, the American state, the American people have to pay for it when he's in America. When he's in Nigeria, the Nigerians. If he's in Jamaica, the Jamaicans. If he's in the United Kingdom, the British. So, I mean, that's what that's all about. It basically is dollars and cents, or pounds, shillings and pence. That's what it's all about. And anything else is rubbish. And his entitlement that it should never have been removed. Princess Anne and Prince Edward do not have the degree of security that Harry used to have and is seeking for himself. And they are the children of a monarch. and they were the children of a monarch long before he was, and they always did more work than he did. So he has no grounds for complaint, but he is pig-headed. But then that's not surprising. He seems to be a pig, and he seems to be married to a pig.
Here are some more lowlights from the interview.
Good afternoon.
What I really, really don't like and what I find hard to make peace with is that there are some people on one end of the spectrum who are sitting behind their keyboards writing dangerous or defamatory headlines knowing that it's going to work as clickbait because any context in the rest of the article protects them and there's nothing you can do about it. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have Nobel Prize winners like Maria Ressa, who's literally putting her life on the line, and war correspondents who, again, are putting their lives on the line to bring us the truth. So that, to me, is the spectrum. And my life has been covered by this end of the spectrum, which I will be damned if those journalists are going to ruin journalism for everybody else because we depend on it so much.
You did say in your book, you said, I began to think at some point that Murdoch was evil. You've had very strong words about Rupert Murdoch and what you think he did in this phone hacking scandal. What is the goal of this lawsuit, which has been ongoing now for a very, very long time?
The goal is accountability. It's really that simple.
1,300 people, from what I've read, have settled with the Murdoch folks. And of the 40 claims that originally joined with you in this action, it's down to now 2. And so you think that everybody's just settled because it just doesn't make any economic sense to continue?
No, I know why people have settled. They've settled because they've had to settle. So therefore, one of the main reasons for seeing this through is accountability, because I'm the last person that can actually achieve that, and also closure for these 1,300 people and families.
Now, there's much more where that came from. Head to www.outspoken.live, which is my Substack, and I'm going to go into a deep dive into Harry's bombshell claims with Lady Colin Campbell, because let me tell you, there were yet again multiple lies. So, much more from Lady Colin Campbell coming up. You know Substack is a safe space not patrolled by big tech, where censorship runs deep. And right now, only for a few more hours, our biggest ever sale, 30% off for Black Friday and Cyber Monday at www.outspoken.live. So, back with Lady C on the after show, but back with you here live on YouTube and Rumble tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I'm joined by Paul Thorpe for the first time. Really, really looking forward to having him. Make sure you subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you, but I hope to see you on the after show with Lady Colin Campbell in just one moment.